Hello world, Ijoma O'Neill is my name. I've reached a point in my life where I'm looking back and thinking to give back what I thought I should have had. All my life, I wish I had someone who talked to me, held my hands through the stages. I would have done better than I did right now. And so I think I owe it back to my younger self to have a conversation. And the ONPURPOSE podcast gives me that platform. While talking to my younger self, you're listening to our conversation. And I believe it can help you wherever you are in your 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s. I'm 52 right now. And I intend to talk this way as I get old. So the seasons will change. The conversations will get more intense. But I know that I've lived enough to give you certain nuggets that will help you in your life, building your faith, building your career, building a loving family, making you healthy, and also investing wisely. I hope that you follow us through this conversation on the On Purpose podcast and it will be useful to you. God bless you. I believe that communication is the most important skill in life. Anyone who is effective in communication can inspire others to act, to be a certain way. And I know that communication seems simple on the surface, but there are layers to it. I'm not really talking about those dramatic orators. I'm not talking about those excellent projections of very charismatic personalities on the stage, as we see with politicians or preachers, pulpiteers like myself. Some people just have the gift of gab. They are excellent or gifted wordsmiths that can very easily articulate and string thoughts together in very unique and presentable ways that the listeners are left in amazement, many times just admiring the construction of the words, much more than observing the meaning of the sentences, if they ever mean to cause the people to learn. I think all good teachers are excellent communicators. However, not every great orator is a good teacher. And we live in an age where, because of the fast pace of development, we need new tools to engage the world that we are dealing with today. The basics will always be the basics. However, technology will shift from time to time, and sometimes we feel like the mat is removed from under our feet. Only a few years ago, we were just getting used to the internet, and the AI technology has hit the entire world. And now skills that were once useful 3-4 years ago are becoming obsolete. So the attitude that we require now to cope with the world is the attitude to learn quickly, to unlearn the things we have learned, certain things that served useful purposes in the years past, not so distant past, but right now, are not particularly useful. It used to be then that if you're an excellent graphic artist, you had the space and you are needed, and you can jump on Fiverr or any of these work platforms on net and serve your gift across the globe. Right now, the AI can build a more excellent platform, host a website, design graphics, and many other tools that are yet coming. And suddenly what was useful 2 years ago is antiquated today. My subject here is how to learn. As a teacher, I'm standing before people on a weekly basis, and my job is to labor to transfer the ideologies in my heart from the Word of God and to communicate it in the most simple ways to the hearers, in the hope that by so engaging them, I'll be constructing in their subconscious a mental framework that will influence their belief systems, and their actions. I find that many people grow to adulthood without really constructing a personal ideology that is made up of different parts of a body of thoughts, knowledge that is a coherent philosophy. The worst part is for those of us who have religious inclinations, we are prone to accept things because we like who is saying it. And so our favorite preachers can very easily push down our truth, belief systems that are not in sync with the Bible, and I mean scriptural exegesis, and we just accept it because maybe they are presented in ways that seem very appealing to us. How many of you have heard things like, if you are not transformed, you'll be deformed? Or if what you have is not enough, it's a seed. And all those kind of presentations that seem like a rhyme have a way of subtly implanting in our minds certain ideas and belief systems that may even be detrimental to our working life. So, as a student of life, I'm very curious about the subject of learning. And I can't talk about the subject of learning if it does not amount to transferring whatever you have learned as teaching. So I'll focus this part of my conversation on this series on how to learn. And in a subsequent video, I'll be talking to you about how to teach. The first thing in learning is information. The first thing in learning is information. Anybody who is not desirous or is not committed to engaging information. I will talk about useful information later, but first of all, information will never come to the awareness of the need to make an attitude change in life. Because by exposure to information, we begin to question our pre-existing thoughts and ideas. And that's the only way we can wake up that willingness or that attitude to either reaffirm what we know or question the roots of those thoughts to see if we can change them for better things. As we grow in life, you find that if you are like me, I've never lacked confidence even when I was ignorant. And this kind of ignorance is not the sort that I am clearly aware of. You know, just having confidence about certain things, being sure that that's exactly what they are until you find out otherwise, either through reading or intellectual conversation. One thing that has helped me in my life is through the internet, I exposed myself to conversations. Sometimes political conversations, sometimes philosophical conversations, sometimes ideological, social subjects. And at first, I didn't know what they were talking about, but I just liked what they were saying, and I sat there for hours and hours on end, listening to certain people. But over time, it began to connect. It began to connect. And then I knew there was a rewiring of my mindset. So how do you learn? Number one step to learning is to expose yourself to information. I believe that life is so robust that you have to be a student of history, a student of psychology, a student of philosophy, a student of all the relevant subjects that you need to engage in life. There are certain issues that you need to know just to follow the current trend of politics. By this, it doesn't make you a politician, but it broadens your sphere of awareness. You are aware of certain trends political trend, global political trends, and sometimes local political trends. Not for the purpose of gossip, not even for activism, but just to know and to see. And so exposure is the beginning. How you learn exposure. Read materials. Listen to audio books. Today you have your phone. As you drive along, listen to trainings, sometimes not even training, forums where debates are held so that you can hear various parts of the conversation. For example, in American politics today, depending on the news station that you are used to, you may think the world is colored a certain way until you begin to hear if you listen to Fox News and listen to CNN, you'll be amazed what portion of the news you are missing, because each side has a political bent and therefore covers the story with that bias. And so when you expose yourself to information, either you are the one reading up those information or you're listening to them, listen to multiple preachers, then raise reasonable questions. Not with the attitude to question the authority of the speaker or the subject. I believe that questions are the loose ends of an ideological frame of mind, or frame of thought, I should say. If you want to think something true, you'll be asking questions. And as you ask those questions will lead you to answers, and those answers will bet new questions, and those questions will lead you to new answers, and those answers will bet new questions. And as you go, somewhere along the line, you find out that I speak only to the extent that I have answered questions in my mind concerning different subjects. But I know that the root of my learning, the compass for everything that I learn, is what the Bible says. And so no matter what I have learned from reading any kind of book, I don't even consider, I read books that people call bad books. I do not only, history presents itself, but history presents to us the victors, the villain, the conquered, and those who conquered them. So I do not only read the Bible, I read all kinds of books. I listen to preachers, many of them talk about a certain book and they call them poisons and the rest of it. And I understand their position. Their position is just like what happens in the Garden of Eden. God warned Adam not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because there's a level of balance, there's a level of psychological or mental maturity that is required to engage in certain subjects. Because if you don't have that balance and you engage in the subject, you can be misguided and you can get into problem. However, why that is true, who is to say who can and who cannot deal with certain knowledge? Who is to say that? Because sometimes we overrate ourselves and then we very easily write off this. I read books, as I was growing up, I read books from other, what will I call it? Belief systems like the Ekankar, the Amok, and the rest of it. One thing I know is that if it is truth, it will always remain true, meaning that the principle will be the same no matter what the subject is. So you must open yourself to a barrage of information. Number two, you must have the attitude of asking questions. Those questions should lead you on a path where you find connections in the subject. When you begin to gain how the parts are connected in a particular subject, you begin to understand or grasp a subject from a broader perspective. I'll close with this example. Politically, the political spectrum is spread from left to right, and some people are in between. Some people are center to the left, other people are further away from the left, and some people are centered to the right. And what does all that mean? It's just a simple ideology. People to the right believe in the supremacy of the individual within the context of the collective, and people to the left believe in the supremacy of the collective with the individual as a significant part of it. This has nothing to do with power, basically. This is a frame of thinking. And so somebody who is given to the group before the individual naturally is more likely to think like the left-leaning ideologies, which in America will be called Democratic Party. That's why their policies favor the group. That's why they are the proponents for identity politics. That's why they are the people who want social reforms and all the rest. Now, to the right, the ideas favor the individual. That's why they are given to capitalism. That's why they are given to things like religious freedom. They are more tended to absolutism, which is more likely to accept the existence of a supreme being that's an absolute power, which is God. Unlike the left, that is constantly flattening the horizon for everybody to have a place in it. So if you look at it, by the time you begin to see the world as it is, not as you want it to be, then you are participating there as a global citizen. You are becoming a part of it. I will continue this conversation, but I'd like to stop this part here on how to learn. I'll do a second episode from here on, and then we'll pick up from there.